this signal just now.
Oh no! Son of a bitch.
You get your two?
Yeah.
Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Thotgor here, of course, and today we are going to take a look at some replays at Tier 4. Yes, I don't often take a look at lower tiers. It's not that I don't enjoy lower tier gameplay, it's just simply that, you know, when I'm playing ships, usually I'm grinding towards something, and usually that something is, you know, usually in the tier 8s or above level. So that is usually why we do see that sort of gameplay on the channel. But I always appreciate, you know, anyone sending in any replays, as terrible as I am of actually putting up those replays. I do really appreciate them being sent in. So today we are taking a look at 2 of those replays. First one, of course, we have Puddahead in the Arkansas beta. Now, I know I did mention in yesterday's video that I most likely wouldn't actually be able to get a video up today because of prior engagements, but I did manage to find the time, have the time put aside here, so we are going to get some ships in, and I figured to make it a little longer video than maybe normal. Anyway, in the Arkansas beta, following around Puddahead here. Now, I did have the Arkansas beta. Obviously, I was in closed beta, you know, so I did get one, but the Arkansas beta for me was, or at least what I found, was it just wasn't worth holding on to. I'm not a ship collector. I don't you know, collect all the ships to have them, anything like that. I do hold on to certain ships that, you know, I just like historically and whatnot, but other than that, no. So the Arkansas beta for me, the only thing it was worth was the port slot. Yeah. Now, I know a lot of you are probably sitting there going, Thotgor, what in the hell did you do? Yeah, I know. I just, whatever. No regrets. Anyway, we are on New Dawn and in the Arkansas beta. Now, the Arkansas beta did undergo some changes, some upgrades, and some tweaking that Wargaming did to her just to make her a little better, which is nice to see. And we're on New Dawn and it's Domination. And Domination is always a fun mode to play. I actually prefer playing Domination more than I prefer playing Standard Battle, where it's just, you know, capture the 2 bases. I frankly wish I could only play Domination and be with people who would only play Domination, so that when you are in Domination you don't get sucker punched, I guess, by your own teammates who refuse to cap points because they think that they can kill the enemy ships quick enough. But Anyway, that's neither here nor there. We do see some enemy ships popping up here in the distance, and we also, you may have noticed, one of our teammates has turned pink due to some friendly fire. Yes, well, there was friendly fire. Whether or not that person was already pink, don't quite remember. But anyway, we are lining up on some destroyers off in the distance. We can see that at this point in time, the enemies have capped the north and south point, while Puddahead's team has managed to hold on to the middle point. This isn't actually as bad of a position as you may think, because if you just look at the caps that are taken, yeah, you might start asking questions and whatnot. But I mean, again, we need to reference back the minimap, right? Take a look at the minimap. We can see that there are a lot of allied ships in position at A, and the enemies, in order for the enemies to have capped at these points so quickly, would mean that the enemies would have had to send destroyers off, right? And most likely those destroyers are alone, and so not really too much of a big big deal or a big fight to actually get in there and take one of those points. And that's exactly what we're seeing taking place slowly on the minimap at A. Now, in the meantime, Puddahead obviously did get a nice little hit there on the Karlsruhe, which was great. Just a little tap on the shoulder just to let that player know that Puddahead's still here, right? Still here. We can see some other enemy battleships off in the distance. We do have an enemy destroyer here up close as well, so, you know, kind of a big deal. You really do want to watch the destroyers, especially in these lower tiers, because the destroyers can actually get in there pretty quickly and do a whole bunch of damage to you before you even have time to react. Whereas if you are, you know, on top of the destroyers and making sure that they are at least getting fired upon and taking damage, we can see that, you know, the enemy destroyers will end up much like this destroyer that we're looking at now. Engines are gone, coming under fire from a few enemy ships here. Now, Puddahead obviously as well has switched over to high explosive. I mean, he's firing at destroyers, so it was a good, you know, really actually quite solid change from the armor piercing to the high explosive, something that I can never manage to do on time. But Puddahead managed it, so fantastic. So we've got high explosives in the barrel, just hoping to land a few shots on these destroyers, right? Because I know we talk a lot about, or rather I talk a lot about keeping armor piercing loaded in your battleships, right? That's because most people, at least what I have seen, most people aren't able to actually effectively switch between their shell types. You know, there's going to be exceptions to that. I'm one of the people, though, who can't effectively switch between them, so I keep my armor piercing loaded up. Puddahead manages it, though, quite well, and at these lower tiers as well. I mean, this is, what, a tier 4 battle, tier 5 battle, maybe? You know, high explosive will still do a whole crap ton of damage to enemy battleships and cruisers. So it's not not the end of the world, I guess, when it happens here at lower tiers. But Puddahead, you know, pulls it off without any hitch, and still has a high explosive loaded, because obviously with the high explosive loaded, he's making sure to target the enemy destroyers, right? That's where you're going to go, where you are going to get the most bang for your buck with your battleship high explosive. Destroyers have popped out, though, so we're, you know, not 100% sure where they are. We obviously know that they do still see us, because we have been firing as of recently. As well, we are going to just sort of size up some other enemy targets. So we see a South Carolina off in the distance who has unfortunately grounded himself. And again, yeah, we're firing high explosive, but at these lower tiers, the high explosive will still do considerable damage to the enemy battleships. I know that salvo didn't do that much, but, you know, it will happen. Now, Puddahead, again, you know, affects the good ammo changeover here, and we have the armor piercing, rather, loading up, getting ready to shoot down this South Carolina, assuming we actually, you know, manage the kill. At the very least, get a bit of damage here done, right, to this South Carolina before those torpedoes hit, most likely take the player out. In the meantime, consulting the minimap, we do see that our allies have taken A, so this is fantastic. You can see, you know, obviously, yep, there was only one destroyer up there. Now, whether or not that destroyer is dead now, no idea. But at the very least, we know that that destroyer is no longer in the vicinity, right? A is ours and B is ours, so we have the cap advantage, and now it's just a matter of, you know, holding these caps and fighting off any sort of enemy advances, which shouldn't be too hard. We're in a pretty good position here. We do have some torpedoes coming in from an enemy destroyer, so 3 spreads of 2 torpedoes. It's probably a Japanese destroyer. We can see the Kwachi, I think, took 1 torpedo, but the Wyoming and Puddahead managed to avoid the torpedo. So, you know, it could have been a very devastating torpedo strike, but luckily battleships were all over that one. We do see another enemy battleship rounding, or rather cruiser, rounding the corner over here. So if we can get some some nice shots lined up in this player, we might be able to land some pretty decent citadel shots. But then, you know, Puddahead was consulting the minimap and noticed that there's a number of enemy ships who are pushing up the east side of the map, right? We can see them on the minimap. These players are pushing up the east side and hoping to, you know, obviously flank the Puddahead's team. So Puddahead's moving into position to start helping out and defending against these guys. We do have another friendly battleship off in the distance, so we can see the player over there. It just crossed my mind whether or not that player was AFK or not, so we'll have to double check on that player as we get a little closer, see what that player is saying. But in the meantime, we do have some enemy destroyers off in the distance, right? We have the American Tier 3 destroyer. This is the infamous destroyer for me anyway, in that I always call it the Wickets. Yeah. It's not the Wickets, Thotgor. Not at all. But anyway, we are going to fire some shots off at the enemy destroyer, see what we can do, maybe land a few shots, do a bit of damage. We are outside of this destroyer's torpedo range. We don't have to worry about incoming torpedoes. It's just a matter of, you know, helping out the enemy St. Louis here and potentially taking down this enemy destroyer to deprive the enemy of, you know, the continuation of contesting the B cap, which is something is not so great. Anyway, we do see the torpedo indicator there, warning of torpedoes, but once again, no concern for us. We know that those torpedoes are not going to hit. Sizing up the enemies who are moving up on the eastern side, we do see a few cruisers. They have one cruiser, there's a Svetlana, a St. Louis, and I believe a South Carolina with them as well. So it's a pretty decent little strike force they have going on here. Considering as well, all the defense over here on the east consists of, yeah, I'm pretty sure that battleship is AFK and Puddahead. So essentially, we just have one ship versus three. So we're hoping to be able to effect a good defense here. Keep in mind, at this point in time as well, Puddahead has managed to preserve most of his hit points as well. So this is going to come into play here, you know, pretty significantly in the upcoming battle. So we do have the Svetlana on in our sights here, right? So we fire off a few shots at the Svetlana. Now, AFK players do suck. You know, it's never great having them, but it is nice, at least, when the AFK player ship is there and the enemies are too concerned about getting themselves a kill rather than shooting the ship that is actually firing back at them, right? So that is nice. And we saw this Svetlana did start engaging the enemy our allied battleship here, but yeah, moved in for the torpedo strike, got the kill, and then quickly switched over to Puddahead. So now it's just Puddahead over here affecting some, you know, affecting whatever defense he possibly can. Although if we consult the minimap, we do note that we have an allied cruiser who is in the center of B, who does have the potential to help support us here in our defense, right? Shooting in at those enemy ships who are on their way up the eastern side. Putting shots into, or attempting to put shots into the Svetlana, that is a slippery little destroyer here, or little cruiser here. It is hard to actually land shots, especially when you have a player, you know, who obviously knows a thing or two about maneuverability, or about maneuvering here as well, and is, you know, putting up some decent angling here as well to make sure to get the maximum amount of firepower out while protecting his ship. We do also see the South Carolina coming into play here as well. We are on fire, but yeah, we have the hit points to absorb it, I suppose. So, you know, 10 seconds left on that, or 14 seconds rather left on that. We do have shots going into the South Carolina. We do manage a bit of damage there, but unfortunately that South Carolina returned shots and did a whole bunch of damage to us. Now we are almost pretty good damage there from the fire, but that South Carolina got some pretty nice shots in. So fire is out. We are repairing ourselves now, and you know, excellent time to take it defensive posture really. With the Arkansas beta, the Wyoming as well, as we'll see in the next replay coming up. You do have a number. The majority of your turrets are on the rear of the ship. However, these turrets were designed to be fired broadside on, right? To be able to get all of them fired. They're not necessarily designed to fire from the rear at an angle. You'll have a hard time actually getting most of the turrets firing, you know, when you want, while you're doing some sort of maneuvers. You'll usually be able to get two, no problem. You can see Puddahead does have a good angle going on, right? He did get the back four fired off. But if you don't want to drive straight away from an enemy player to present as small a target as possible, you're only going to be able to fire two of those turrets most likely. Anyway, we are putting shots in on the South Carolina, but this Svetlana is becoming a huge pain in our sides. Just cascading in the high explosive, right, as he should be. I mean, this is really the bread and butter here for Russian destroyers, Russian cruisers, although you can make the argument really for any cruiser at any tier. We do get some shots in on the Svetlana, but, you know, nothing too significant. And this is something else that the Svetlana has going for her is, you know, the total and utter lack of armor, which means unless you hit the Svetlana in a specific spot, to get a citadel or, you know, to do some critical damage, the shells that you land are probably just going to be over penetrations and probably just go right through her. Which, you know, as crazy as that is, those are the mechanics we have. We do land a few shots on the South Carolina. Did about 4,400 in that salvo, so that's not too bad at all. You know, South Carolina is almost dead, so hopefully we can get a few last shots into the player here and manage to take the player down. That wouldn't be too bad at all. We're already up to about 43,000 damage, which isn't too bad at all either, considering especially, you know, tier 4 battle. Shots go out onto the South Carolina. We can see that they, you know, are nearing the end there, and there they go. Land. We got some few shots, or did a bit of damage there, but definitely nothing too significant, and the South Carolina remains alive. Fortunately, though, with the remaining health that the South Carolina has, hopefully, you know, it's not going to be too big of a deal. One less salvo into the player and the player will be down. That's what we're hoping for. In the meantime, we do still have the enemy Svetlana, and the enemy St. Louis is now coming into play. We can see the St. Louis putting shots into us now, so that's not so great. We do finish off the South Carolina, which is fantastic, and also gives us our second kill for the game, so not too bad at all. And the enemy Svetlana pops up once again. So yeah, we continue to duke it out with these two cruisers. Now, if we notice, while all of this was going on, the majority of our team has actually died. Yes, there is only Puddahead and one allied cruiser remaining. However, we do still control 2 out of 3 points, so this is fantastic. So we do still have, you know, a decent lead in points overall as well, but more importantly, we have the cap point advantage. Now, the enemies do have 4 ships remaining, 3 cruisers remaining to be exact, so, you know, and 1 destroyer rather, so, you know, they are actually in a well-placed scenario here to actually push the caps and take the points, potentially get a victory out of this for themselves. Unfortunately for the enemy team, 2 of their cruisers have decided to, you know, just basically be completely out of position at this point in time. To be fair, though, their original strategy obviously was to, you know, push up the east, circle in, flank the Puddahead's team here and get B. That just didn't work out for them, and they've overcommitted. Now, in the meantime, we do have the enemy destroyer who is making a cap on B, so this is unfortunate. Not a whole lot the Puddahead and his ally are going to be able to do in this situation. There we go. Finally, the stupid Svetlana is gone. I'm just, you know, saying stupid out of frustration because it was a long battle with that Svetlana. The player who was actually playing the Svetlana, you know, kudos to that player, good job. But the Svetlana is now gone with the Citadel as well, so fantastic. Puddahead earns himself another kill, up to 3 now. So now if we can just take out this enemy St. Louis, we will have victory, right? 990 points, so just a matter of taking out the St. Louis and we will be able to hopefully call this victory, which shouldn't be too far away now. We do see the enemy destroyer. We have some final shots going into the enemy St. Louis. There we go, enemy St. Louis is down. Victory is ours. Fantastic. And this was a pretty great game in the old Arkansas beta. So about 59,000 damage dealt. You can see the different missions and awards that were credited. 4 kills, 252,000 credits. We do finish first overall on the team, which isn't too bad at all, at 1,089 experience. So highest earning experience earner on either sides. We do see how some of the damage has broken down here as well in terms of you know, the battles that we fought with that South Carolina and Svetlana there. And then of course, when all is said and done, we do walk away with a bit of experience and credits. Unfortunately, I can't see the exact credit amount, but still, there's a bit involved there. Moving into our next clip, you can see we're with OldDogg61 in the Wyoming on Solomon Islands. I do love Solomon Islands. When I play, you know, if I'm just messing around by myself or in a division that doesn't need to go any certain tier or anything like that, I am going to jump down to tier 5 in my Minikaze, and if I get on this map in the Minikaze or the Kamikaze R, it's good times usually had by all. So, you know, great map here on Solomon Islands. Anyway, in the Wyoming, so essentially, you know, an updated, up-armored version of the Arkansas beta. The Wyoming, of course, actually has the benefit of having a bit of AA on her, I believe, so that is not too bad at all. And, of course, upgraded hull, so you do get some better armor and more hit points, which is always fantastic. So we're going to move off over to, well, I mean, we did spawn in the north, right? So we are going to move off into the north here and take a look to see what comes around the headland over there. Now, this is not a domination map mode, so, you know, it's just a matter of capping the enemy base or, you know, destroying as many ships as you can while you're on your way to the enemy base, while obviously defending your base. In terms of, you know, what we have on the enemy teams is basically a tier 4 battle. We don't have too much to worry about, actually. I know that there's a Langley on the enemy team, and, you know, aircraft carriers usually are of some concern, but the Langley isn't so great. I wouldn't be too concerned about the Langley, to be honest. Anyway, we do also see that the team is splitting up decently, I suppose. I mean, there are a number of ships going down to the south. I generally don't like the south on Solomon Islands. It just seems so far out of the way and so remote. Like it just to me makes more sense to go to the north or to the middle. But the south, I mean, not to say that I haven't gone down to the south. If people want to go down there, I definitely will. It's just a different kind of battle, I suppose. Anyway. We luckily are moving into the north and we can start seeing some enemy ships pop up here. So this is fantastic. So we do have an enemy cruiser. It's an enemy Karlsruhe, I believe. And we do have armor piercing loaded up as well. So with the armor piercing, we're hoping obviously to be able to get a few citadel shots off at the enemy cruiser. In the background, we do notice as well on the minimap that we do see an enemy battleship. At this point in time on the minimap as well, based on the enemy ships that we see, it kind of looks like the enemies are still sort of figuring out where they're going to go. It does look like a few are heading to the north, a few have headed through the middle, and there are maybe one battleship heading to the south. So we have a general sense of how the enemy is going to be dividing themselves up here, which is, you know, always handy to have, just in your back pocket, right? Keep it in the back of your mind so that if you're trying to figure out where you want to go next, you sort of have a general sense as to where they may be, right? And you're always scanning as well the mini-map to make sure that as enemy ships pop up, you get updated positions on those enemy ships as well. Just so important to maintain your situational awareness. So we are going to move beyond the island. We're going to move beyond the island a little slow, though. We want to we're going to kind of creep out here and see what we can see, so we don't get, you know, overexposed. Now the enemies only have one destroyer, and our team only has one destroyer as well, so we don't have too much to worry about in terms of being ambushed by torpedoes, you know, early in the game. But we do also need to keep in mind that, you know, they have cruisers that definitely do have torpedoes, so if we get close to those cruisers, you know, there will be something to worry about very, very quickly. We get a few shots off into the enemy Karlsruhe, do a bit of damage to the player, so that's not too bad at all. We have an enemy Königsberg coming up here, so this means that it's actually tier 5 battle, Thotgor. Yeah. Anyway, put some shots into the, loading shots to get ready to put shots into the enemy Königsberg. So shots are away, and just need to wait for those to land and see what sort of damage we manage to rack up. There we go. Do about half the damage to the enemy Königsberg, which isn't too bad, and get a citadel there as well. Those Königsberg and Nuremberg, you know, they are great cruisers. I really enjoy them, but you do not sail them in a straight line, you know, really close to the enemies at the beginning of the game like this, where there are a lot of different targets you can engage, right? It is just not going to go very well for you at all. In the meantime, we did manage to sink an enemy battleship, so that's not too bad at all. There goes an enemy destroyer as well, and so far we've only lost an enemy, one of our destroyers in return, so that's not too bad. We have another enemy Königsberg coming up here as well, and again, this player is driving in a straight line. Oh god. It always surprises me, because, you know, cruisers are difficult to play. I'm not gonna lie. Cruisers are difficult to play, but it just freaks me out that, you know, you can't expect to drive in a straight line and do very well, right? I mean, look at that. 2 more citadels, knock out the engine, and the player has, you know, basically no hit points remaining. We have some more shots going in, get another citadel, and finish the player off, right? It serves no purpose whatsoever to drive in there in a cruiser this early in the game with, you know, no hope of any sort of success. There's enemy ships everywhere. You gotta hold it off. And especially with the Königsberg and the Nuremberg, I mean, they have great range, so use the range to your advantage. You'll find that the ships will perform much, much better for you. So as we're firing into the enemy Wyoming off in the distance, we did catch a glimpse there of the 2 enemy Königsbergs sinking in the distance. Yes, both drove in straight lines and both were taken down right away, basically. So that actually does work out pretty well for us. Well, pretty well for OldDogg's team anyway, because now 2 less cruisers to worry about, on top of the 1 destroyer and battleship that's already gone to still the 1 destroyer that we've lost. So this is pretty good. So we do have a bit of a slugfest going on up here at the north, and again, this is why I do like fighting it out at the north, because generally this is where a lot of the people are going to be found, and if you can take down these people fairly quickly, you can usually seal victory for your team within the first, I don't know, 5-6 minutes of the battle, which isn't too bad. And that's essentially what we have going on right now with OldDogg's team, right? If we consult our minimap, we take a look that the majority of the enemy ships are in fact up here at A, engaged and losing, while OldDogg's team has a pretty considerable force actually down there in the south, pushing around the island and hopefully will eventually make their way into the enemy base, all the time, right, harassing the enemies who are also trying to put up some sort of defense at their base. So we have a pretty great situation unfolding here as well. We've got shots going into the enemy New York, do about, what was that, 6,300 damage, I believe, not 100% sure, so that's not too bad at all. The enemy New York does eat one of those torpedoes as well, so excellent. We do have, what is that, an enemy Kuma. Enemy Kuma driving a straight line, but luckily the enemy Kuma does actually manage to pop out of sight. We're going to focus back on the enemy New York. This is, the enemy New York decided to sail off on his own here, try and make a push through, which isn't always a bad play. It does work out at times. Just not this time for this player. OldDogg does get some few more shots there into the enemy New York and does end up doing a bit more damage as well. We can see some torpedoes being fired by one of our more clueless allies, because there's no way that those torpedoes are going to hit anything at all. Maybe the player just wanted to fire off those torpedoes. I have no idea. It's actually one of the biggest pet peeve I have in the game, actually, when I see something like that take place. I have my microphone on push to talk, and that's for a reason, because usually I'm cursing at people for their stupidity. Anyway, those torpedoes were useless, but in the meantime, we did manage to get some nice shots on that New York, and I think that was about 10,000 damage that we did in that salvo, so that is not too shabby at all. The New York has realized that OldDogg here is actually, engaging him, and the New York has decided to actually go bow into OldDogg here rather than present the broadside, and this is a good play by that New York. It's sad that it just took that player this long to realize it. Anyway, OldDogg is taking a look around the battlefield, right? We do note that there are still a number of enemy ships remaining in the north, so even once this enemy New York is gone, we're going to have to still play it safe, right? We might not necessarily be able to push beyond over onto the east side and then to the south just right away. We do have some more shots going into the enemy New York here. We can see there on the way. Enemy New York is on pretty low health, and there we go. Fantastic. We've killed the New York and managed to get our second kill. We're already up to 74,000 damage, which is not too shabby at all. In the meantime, our team is now pushing, the team in the south is pushing into the enemy base, right? You can see they were down there harassing the enemy a bit. They may have taken out another enemy ship down there as well, I believe, and now are making some pushes towards the enemy base, so this is fantastic. In the meantime, we have a Yubari coming up within 4 kilometers. Now, obviously, this Yubari is going to be attempting to launch torpedoes, right? So we need to keep this in mind. OldDogg, though, so he's all over this. He has shots going into the Yubari. We've got our armor piercing loaded up, so there's another citadel, about half health done to that enemy Yubari, so that is not too shabby at all. And this is something else that you really want to keep in mind with your cruisers. Even though your cruisers have torpedoes, your torpedoes are not your primary armament. You should never be putting yourself into a situation where you're trying to fire torpedoes solely, right? Like you're not lining up your guns and putting yourself into position so that you can fire your guns effectively. Rather, you're putting yourself into a position for your torpedoes. This is wrong. This is very, very wrong. With your Japanese cruisers, are a little more forgiving on that matter because the range of the torpedoes. However, with any other cruiser that offers torpedoes, no. The range will not forgive you whatsoever. Just don't do it. Your guns are your primary target. So the enemy Yubari is gone, so this is fantastic. We see the enemy battleships off in the distance. What do we have out there? Wyoming and a Texas, I believe. Yes, that is a Texas, because we can see the America camouflage there, fluttering in the wind. Anyway, we did do a bit of damage there to the Texas, which isn't too bad at all. The Texas is obviously the ship that's going to go down first, and if we can manage to sink the Texas, we might be able to pull out victory here for us as well. The enemies obviously only have these 2 ships remaining, the Texas and the Wyoming, so you know the southern push there was very effective, on top of the excellent fight that we had up here at A. Shots go into the Texas, finish off the Texas. Now we just have the enemy Wyoming to worry about. We're up to about 89,000 damage done so far in this battle as well, which is not too shabby at all. We have done a number of citadels in this battle as well, which is pretty decent as, you know, just sort of cherry on the top, I guess. Quickly coming to the end of the battle, though, we can see an ally just did a massive amount of damage there to the Wyoming. Shots go in, finish off the Wyoming, and victory is ours. Fantastic. When all is said and done, we do get victory. 3 kills, 89,000 damage, which isn't too bad. All the missions were completed there, which is excellent. 5 Citadel hits as well. You can see we're top of the team overall. Again, you know, with the overall experience on both teams, we're top, which isn't too bad. Most likely considering the damage that was dealt, right? We can see the damage breakdown here as well, how that worked out. It didn't work out too well at all for those enemy cruisers, gotta say. And then we are playing on a standard account, so when all is said and done, we walk away with 150,000 credits and 2,700 experience. Not too shabby, and thank you Puddahead and OldDogg for sending in the replays. You know, keep sending them in. I will do my best to get them up and try to... I don't know what I'm going to do to myself to make it more of a priority. I don't know. I'll work on it. Anyway, you know, as always, I do hope you enjoyed today's video. Leave any comments you have for me in the video comment section below. Love reading those and responding back to them. Remember to hit the old like button if you did like today's video. Remember to hit subscribe if you were not a subscriber. And as always, I do hope you enjoy the rest of your day.